I wonder how much time it took to plan this, and did it start with 1 or 2 of you and it grew to 6 of you? Did you have 20 and some dropped out when they thought about the reality of those hunger pangs? Yes.
I'd like to respond to something you just said, which is, how do people react to this? Well, often when, and I'm a Rotarian, so when I present at my Rotary Club, there's always, someone who goes, well, how am I going to run my chainsaw? And
I live in Texas now, so I know that guy. I know that guy. Yeah.
And it is up to us to constantly own the narrative and enlarge the frame and say, I don't know how you're going to run your chainsaw, but would you like your children to be able to breathe and drink clean water and eat? We have to constantly enlarge this frame, this narrative, so that people don't focus on my comforts. Yeah, you might have to give something up, horrors. But what's important, and keep saying, what is the big picture? What is the big important picture? I think Nathan wanted to say something.
Oh, yeah, just that it's tough to break through, because this story of the Peabody Peaker, as Judith said, it's called Project 2015A. When people hear that, it makes no sense. And then this is an acronym-laden process with acronyms like MWEC and ISO and FERC. And I can see your eyes are already glazing over, but it's hard to break through.
2015A may stand for asinine. That's what I'm thinking, but.
Yeah, so people don't know, and we have to break through with stories to tell this story, and we're doing a story in our lives right now to break through. And we visited the grid operator last Friday, the independent system operator, ISO, and the external affairs director came out to meet us, and that person didn't even know about how the Peabody Peaker plant is actually connected in an anti-democratic way to anti-democratic decisions that have been made all the way at the level of the New England grid and up to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC. So the Peabody Peaker plant is like a line in the sand. It's a point that connects to much larger scales.
Do you have any support at your state legislator level?
Oh, yeah.
And did they come out to support you? Have there been letters of, to the editor in your local newspapers? I read a couple of articles, because you're trying to obviously bring attention to the people who are in a position to, well, people in power, even though this is an issue of power, different kind of power, and they're not always as enlightened as we'd like them to be. I suppose you would agree that we should have some rule where you cannot run for office, any office, local, state, regional, or national, unless you believe in science. Maybe take a science quiz. Yes.
Yeah. So right now, the power, a lot of it is with the governor and his secretary. And so we are asking your listeners, Massachusetts, if they're in Massachusetts, to call Governor Baker and urge him to initiate a review of the environmental impacts and the community impacts that are required and were not done. And so that is an action people can do to help us. I do want to add another thing, just to put this in context. This is a fossil fuel burning plant in a highly densely populated area with a hospital, a quarter mile away. And it is going to create greenhouse gas and toxins, particulate pollution for 30 years. This is, and we have just passed a law saying we're going to be at net zero emissions by 2050 and cut them in half by 2030. So, okay, I understand this. This was, planned 7 years ago, and we know even more, although we knew enough 7 years ago to not do this, but we need to change the plan. We need leadership from the governor to say, okay, we can do this. And there are affordable options. There was a proposal around the same time as this, or maybe a bit later, but that would replace this with battery storage that was in my opinion, even more useful than a temporarily fired up gas plant. That is, and this is, and maybe one of the others can explain the technicalities, because we had to do a lot of investigation. I mean, Nathan found a screenshot on a tweet that showed a piece of information that people didn't know about. And I believe you can confirm, Nathan, that this was referring to the fact that this battery plant storage was deep sixed because it was too cheap. And fossil fuels could not compete with it. So
Have evidence that someone actually said that?
Mhm.
Nathan, can you speak to that?